Hey, what's going on, my ASVAB party people? Anderson here, your ASVAB coach. And in this video, we're going to be going over a little sampler. We're going to be going over each of the 4 sections for the AFQT, so the Arithmetic Reasoning, Mathematical Knowledge, Word Knowledge, and Paragraph Comprehension. So what I want you to do is, when I go to the problem, just pause the video, give it a shot, and then press play when you're ready. Sound good? It's that simple. Let's get to it. So with that said, first one here, Arithmetic Reasoning. So a family went on a road trip, traveling to 4 destinations, and then returned on the same route. They drove 120 miles to their first destination, 60 miles per hour for 2.5 hours to the second destination, 45 miles per hour for 2 hours to the third destination, and another 50 miles to the last destination before returning home. How many total miles did the family drive while on the road trip? All right, so again, go ahead and pause the video, give it a shot, and then press play when you're ready. So hopefully me reading it and everything here gave you a chance to look it over. So let's get started. So first things first, if this is your first video with me, you're gonna learn this very quickly. When it comes to word problems, look at all that information that we read through. It was like 5 sentences. We saw 4 destinations, 120 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, 2.5 hours. Look, first things first with any word problem at all and any problem with life, what the hell is the objective? Like, what are we trying to figure out here? That's the most important thing. The information doesn't matter until you know what it means. So the numbers, all that hoo-ha, don't worry about it. Go straight to the question. And here's what I mean. Right here. How many total miles did the family drive while on the road trip? That's the first thing you always want to start with any word problem, any problem really. You got to understand what the heck you're supposed to figure out. So what does that lead us to though, right? Okay, we see that it says how many total miles did the family drive on the road trip, right? We're looking at that and we still may be confused, but no. The great thing about looking at the question first is that you at least know the objective and you know those key words that you're going to be looking for now. And so what do I mean? What I mean is total miles, family, and then road trip. That's exactly those words. Those are the key words that we want to pay attention to as we go back and review that information again. So with that, all right, cool. We're going to go back to the problem, find anything that has to do with miles, road trip, and just collect that information. We're just going to collect it. And so here we go. Back in the problem, we just grab blue here. A family went on a road trip. They went to 4 destinations, returned on the same route. So first and foremost, before we even get into those numbers, if they are going on this road trip and then returning on the same route, if we want total miles, think about it like this. If we want total miles, doesn't it make sense then that if we can figure out how far they went there, that all we have to do is multiply it by 2 so that we can account for the road trip back. All right, so that's something that you really have to pay attention to. If you read too quickly, you might miss that. And you might pick A as the answer even though it's not the answer. All right, so with that said, all right, 4 destinations, return on the same route. That tells me that they went there and they had to come back. And back. All right, that's what that tells me. There and back. Now, looking at the rest of the information, now let's go ahead and look at those hard numbers here. Let's grab green. All right, 120 miles to destination number 1. All right, cool. So 120 miles. And if I'm looking for total miles, that's pretty good there. Cool. I have a solid number that I can work off of. That was right there for the first destination. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the next piece of information. Let's use purple here. 60 miles per hour for 2.5 hours. All right, so let's use purple there. So 60 miles per hour for 2.5 hours. Okay, no worries, right? So how do we figure out how many miles that is? Because we see miles per hour, that's not exactly a distance, that's a rate. That is a rate, that's speed, right? And so this is where I really need to make sure you understand why formulas are so important. So this is a distance, rate, time problem. So D equals RT, ever heard of that? So we're gonna have to use that here, okay? And so the formula is distance, remember distance here, equals rate times time. You have to know this because if you don't know this, you're going to have a really tough time. It's not going to be much fun if you're trying to do a word problem that involves a formula if you don't know the formula, right? So there it is. And so this is a rate here. A rate is anything that includes the word per, anything that indicates, hey, for every this, there's that. And so 60 miles per hour speed, that is a prime example of a rate. And we have time right there, 2.5 hours. So if we want the distance, again, we want total miles, we want distance here. Let's go ahead and do D equals the rate, which is 60 miles per hour, rate right there, times time, which is 2.5 hours. So 60 times 2.5, what is that? Well, 60 times 2 is 120, and half of 60 is 30. So 120 plus 30, I'm doing mental math here, that's 150 miles. And again, you can do it by hand if you want to. You can absolutely do it by hand, but one thing about the arithmetic reasoning section is that you only get about a minute per question. And so with that said, you're gonna have to be able to calculate quickly, especially mentally. So number 3 here, let's grab a different color. Let's go ahead and say blue. All right, so right here, we see that 45 miles per hour for 2 hours. So miles per hour there for 2 hours. How many miles is that? Well, same thing. We have 45 miles per hour. Again, this is a rate. And then times 2 hours, because that's time. If we want distance, remember that you have to know this religiously. Distance equals rate times time. You got to know it, or else you're going to be in a bad spot. So there's time right there. 45 times 2, that's going to give us 90 miles. And then lastly, let's go ahead and grab brown here. So grabbing brown for the last one here, another 50 miles to the last destination before returning home. So that's going to be very important there. Before, it just says 50 miles. They give you the distance, and so you can feel pretty good about that. And you're set. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to add everything together, and we're done. We see that for that first stop, 120 miles, then 150, then 90, and then 50 again. And so with that said, boom, we're going to take that, add them all together. Add them all together. You can do it like this, or you can do it mentally. Honestly, either way you want is fine. I like doing it mentally, because mentally what you can do in your head and not waste time on paper, you can go ahead and go, hey, 120 plus 150, add 100, so that's 220, all right, 270. Great. What's 270 plus 90? Well, you can treat that like 27 plus 9, which is 36, or 360. Then plus another 50. 360 plus 50, well, that's like 36 plus 5, so that's 41. Put the 0 back, 410. And there you go. So we have 410 miles, but let's not confuse ourselves. The 410 miles, and let me just make sure we can see this. Let me make sure I'm not getting in the way. This 410 miles right here represents the distance there. We have to now account for the distance back. But the great thing is the problem tells us we came back on the same route. And so with that, booyah, just take it, multiply it by 2, and we get 820 miles. And there we are. We're set. That's how we get D as the answer, not A. If you picked A, all you forgot was just to account for the way back. And again, that's what makes it so important to read the information and understand what it means before all that calculating, before all that anxiety and nervousness takes over. So there we are. With this first problem for arithmetic reasoning, answer's D, 820, not A. I almost said A. And so with that said, let's go ahead and turn it over to the next question for mathematical knowledge. All right, so moving on now to mathematical knowledge. So same thing, feel free to pause the video, give this thing a shot, and then press play when you're ready here again. And before we continue, just gotta remind you guys, if you haven't, go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. That way you can receive more videos like this and show your support for Anderson, your ASVAB coach. So let's go ahead and continue on here. The phrase, quote, twice the sum of some number and 20 is represented by which of the following expressions? All right, so this is all about fundamentals of algebra, being able to translate English into math. And this skill, honestly, is one of the most important skills in all of ASVAB math, simply because if you are having trouble being able to read English and know what it means in terms of math, that's already the entire arithmetic reasoning section in terms of translating and giving you a hard time, right? And so not only on top of that, you need to be able to read sentences and just quickly be able to discern, hey, what does this mean? What does this mean? You got to be quick with it. And so this is a skill that I felt very strongly about, and I know that it needed to be included here today. So here we go. Twice the sum of some number and 20. Here's how you're going to go ahead and read this. First off, it says twice the sum. So they're basically saying, hey, double the sum, right? Double the sum. So I'm going to multiply 2 times something. But what is that sum going to be? And so pay attention here, because I'm going to show you why the order here matters so much. So it says twice the sum of some number. Let me just circle that there. Some number and 20. So the sum of some number and 20. And if you're looking at the answer choices, you're going to see X, 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 and X, right? So I think it's okay that we use X as the variable. That's all I'm getting at. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and go for it. So how do you represent the sum of some number in 20? Let me use blue here. The sum of some number in 20 would just be X plus 20. That's all it would be, right? The sum of some number in 20 is just some number X plus 20. Now, where do we go from here? Well, it says twice that sum. So we're going to double the sum. And so in order to make sure that we do the addition first, in order, again, to take the sum first and then double it, we're going to go ahead and place it in the parentheses. So that way we can then double the result. And so if that doesn't make too much sense, don't worry, because I'm going to use a regular plain old example for you. Let's go ahead and say we're talking, and I'm going to use this example here, twice the sum of, and let's go ahead and say, 3 and 5, all right? Twice the sum of 3 and 5. So we're saying here, hey, we're going to double whatever the sum of 3 and 5 is. So the sum of 3 and 5, I think we all know is 8, right? 3 plus 5 is 8. And then if we double that, that should give us 16. So the result here should be 16. Because if you're doubling the result or doubling the sum of 3 and 5, you need to take the sum of 3 and 5 first and then double it. Hence how we get 16. But let's go ahead and now do it the other way, where some people might think, hey, I think we're supposed to double the 3 and then add it to the 5. That doesn't work that way. Because if you double the 3, you're going to get 6. And then if you add the 5, you get 11. Way, 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 way off. And that's the same mistake that a lot of people might make. A lot of people might think, hey, twice the sum of some number, 2x, and 20 plus 20. No, it's not going to work out. That would actually trick you into thinking that the answer is B, which it is not. The answer here is actually A, 2 multiplied by parentheses x plus 20. Because again, you have to read these words very carefully. Twice the sum. So you have to find the sum first and then double it. So I hope that makes sense, because with that said, we're now going to take it over to paragraph comprehension, where we're really going over a specific type of question for sequence of events. So let's go ahead. We're going to move on now. And once we get there, again, watch that thing, pause it if you'd like to, try it out. And let's just go ahead and dive on into it. So in 1969, Honda sold its first automobile in Stop right there. We're going to stop right there. All right, first thing you need to do in any word problem, in any hefty problem at all, is to read the question first. You thought that only applied to math, right? Nah, this counts for paragraph comprehension as well. And so with that said, we're going to dive on in straight to the question. According to the passage, which of the following sequence of events accurately represents Honda model releases from oldest to most current? All right. So this is a sequence of events question. When it comes to these types of questions on the ASVAB, these are very hyper-analytical questions. So I'm sure you've heard of questions if you've been practicing about making inferences or finding the main idea or, interpreting a quote or perhaps, finding what the next sentence in a passage might be. Those are a bunch of different types of questions. We're focusing right now on sequence of events. All right? And so with sequence of events questions, these are hyper-analytical. You always want to use the answer choices to your advantage here. Always, always, always. The reason being is that the answer choices are going to guide you in terms of reading the passage side by side and eliminating the information. Watch what I mean right now. So I'm going to start off with the answer choices. Notice how we're trying to find the sequence of events. And we're trying to find the sequence of events again for Honda model releases. So let me just go ahead and highlight that one more time. From oldest to most current. So we're looking for the oldest first and we'll move forward. So look at the answer choices first. Watch this. We have motorcycles, 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 and then we have a Honda N600 for C. All right, cool. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and read the passage, and we're going to see whether or not motorcycles or the Honda N600 comes first. Because if the Honda N600 comes first, you can go ahead and eliminate A, B, and D because it didn't, the motorcycles didn't come first. But if the motorcycles did come first, then it's C that gets eliminated. Do you see where I'm going with this now? Like, you don't have to read the whole crazy long passage back and forth, No, you can just start with the answers and then start reading. So let's get to it. In 1969, Honda sold its first automobile in America. the Honda N600. All right, be very careful, because if you read that first sentence and you think that you're all good, be careful, man, be careful, because the next sentence clearly says prior to that. What does prior mean? Prior to that. Think about it. That means before this event. So before the Honda N600, before that, let me actually use purple here to highlight that. Before the Honda N600, we see that Honda was solely known for making motorcycles. There you go. So before the Honda N600, Honda was making motorcycles. Right there. So what that tells me is that motorcycles came first because of that phrase right there, prior to that. And we can happily look at answer choice C and say bye-bye. Again, the Honda N600 came after motorcycles. We see it clearly right here. Before the N600, we have motorcycles. So A, B, and D are candidates. C is gone. You see where I'm going now? Because we're going to dive into the next set now. Because the next part here, we see that we have options. Honda N600, Honda N600 there as well. But then answer choice B says Honda Civic. All right, so let's find out which one comes next, the N600 or the Civic. So we see here that the general public doubted Honda's ability to produce efficient cars at the time, but those thoughts soon digressed. By 1974, Honda engineers created a groundbreaking CVCC engine, making their Civic the first vehicle to meet the strict emission standards of the new U.S. Clean Air Act. So let's just go ahead and highlight some things before we feel like we're getting overwhelmed. It says by 1974, Honda had the groundbreaking engine, yada yada, Civic. So in 1974, that's when the Civic started getting into production and getting into the hands of people and to producers and consumers. And so with that, if we're looking at the past here in purple, because that's what or we're using orange now for the N600, we see here that 1969, the N600 was sold. And then it says in 1974, that's when the Civic came. Which one came first? 1969, the Honda N600. And so with that said, answer choice B goes bye-bye because the Civic did not come before the N600. Next, and I know I'm going a little slow here. I know that. But what we want to make sure we're doing here is understanding the strategies that I'm using. Because once you learn the strategy, continuously apply it, then you'll be able to push faster and faster and faster, getting ready for test time. So that's all I'm doing here, okay? I know I'm taking it slow, but I gotta make sure you understand this. So with that said, now we're debating here between A and D. We just need to find out, hey, which one comes first? Is it gonna be the Honda Civic or is it gonna be the Honda Accord? Which one comes next? Let's check it out. Next here, it says again, by 1974, that's when the Civic came out. Then 2 years later, right here, 2 years later, Honda launches the Accord. So it says 1974, that's the Civic. 2 years later, the Accord. So it's the Civic first and then the Accord. Civic first, then the Accord. Answer A is the answer. There are no doubts about it, and we're all good. And there we are. So how does that feel right now? Is it kind of crazy? Is it a new technique for you? Again, remember, comment down on this video. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you can continuously get more of what you need. And also, before I go into word knowledge, remember that you can always visit www.duranlearning.com to get any of the ASVAB resources that you need, like my group tutoring, live classes, recordings, my boot camps coming out. There's so many different things that you can use. And so if you have any questions, again, just look in the description of this video. That way you can get my contact info or anything else that you may need, like the website links, to see all the things that I offer to help you raise your score. Trust me, you won't regret it. So lastly, let's go ahead and hop into word knowledge. So null most nearly means what? Pause the video. I'm going to give you just 2 more seconds here. All right, cool. So the answer here, word knowledge is pretty straightforward. The answer here will be D, invalid. All right, it will be invalid. And so let me just go ahead and go into a little bit about how you want to practice for the word knowledge. Because a lot of people think that the word knowledge is something that you absolutely have to find a list of words and memorize that list of words and hope that they're on the test. That's not how it works, okay? That is absolutely not how it works. When it comes to the word knowledge section, the best way that you can prepare yourself is to understand a set, as many as you can, of commonly used words. Now, when I say common words, I'm not talking about words that you know to be absolutely true all day, every day. No, I'm talking about words that are used in everyday English language. So null may not be a word that you use regularly, but I can guarantee you it's a word that you've heard before. Okay? That's what we mean. So find words, common words, use apps or whatever you need to get that done, to find a bunch of common words and continuously practice them and make them part of your language. Notice how here we give you the definition and we give you the word used in a sentence. So right over here, our contract is not null and void since you've breached the rights of our agreements. All right? So, and it should say our contract is now null and void. Excuse that right there. That's a small little error, but it's all good. That meant now right there. So our contract is now null, like the contract is over. It is invalid because you've breached the rights of our agreement. And so, with that said, if you want to practice more word knowledge words, get ready for our word knowledge bootcamp that's coming out in just a couple of weeks here. We're going to have 500 words just like this, presented in this way, online for you. You can go ahead and grab it and sign in whenever you need to, multiple choice format. And there's also an exam that you can mix and match as many questions as you'd like to get that done. And so with that said, again, that's coming out in 2 weeks. If you are on my email list, I will be sending out a nice email in terms of how to grab it at a pre-order sale. That way you can keep working forward in the right way. And also, if you'd like it for free, if you are in my all access package, so my group tutoring, my math bootcamp, and everything else on my website, you get any new course and updates to all my resources for free. And all you have to do is be in the all access package. And again, the links to all of that are in the description of this video. But at the end of the day, remember, you're trying to get the score you want so you can get the military job you deserve. So I'm Anderson, your ASVAB coach, and at the end of the day, your success matters most to me. If you have any questions, just reach out. You can join my Facebook support group. It's absolutely free to join, or you can check out all of my other free resources on duranlearning.com, and you can go to the link titled Freebies. So with that said, you guys all have a great day. I'll see y'all in the next video coming out next week. And with that said, just stay awesome. Love y'all. Peace.